guys, it's Nicole and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to give an update on these orchids you see in front of you here. And I got these orchids from Hausermann 1 year ago today. So I'm going to walk through how they've grown in the past year and share a couple of updates. And for the most part, these guys are doing pretty well. Some of them have already bloomed and some of them are growing very, very nicely. If you guys like this kind of video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more orchid content. Anyway guys, let's jump right in. First up is the Phalaenopsis Bellina, and this is the platinum crossed with red star. So I'd say since I got this orchid, it's grown a couple of leaves, which are much larger than the original leaves that this orchid came with. And they're growing sort of outside. This one got a little bit of damage. I don't remember what exactly happened here, but the leaves came out a little bit funky. But otherwise, I'm happy to report that when I bought this, I was told it was 1 to 2 years from blooming, and we have our first flower bud. So you can see it right there. So it's the first time this is gonna bloom for me, and Hausermann was very accurate with this. So it is blooming when they said it would. I repotted it shortly after I got it. I probably need to refresh this sphagnum moss, but this pot is full of roots, so this is growing very, very nicely. So far this has done quite well, and I can't wait to see that bloom for the first time. Now up next we've got the Phalaenopsis Violacea variation Indigo crossed with sibling. So I bought this together with the Bellina. I was surprised to see this orchid bloom first because it is smaller compared to the Bellina. Let me grab it real quick. You could sort of see the size difference there, but this one was the first to bloom, and it bloomed for me a couple of times already. I believe it bloomed 3 or 4 times at this point. Now, I'll say that with the Violacea, this one, unfortunately, I had to repot because I started getting spider mites, and then it ate through the spike over here. So I sprayed it down very well. I noticed it was prone to spider mites since last spring, so I had to keep spraying it down. It just seems like maybe a little bit weaker than that Bellina, but it did bloom. I hope for another flower spike to push out once it's ready, probably next spring or summer when it gets warm again, because this is done. But its first bloomings were very beautiful. This is a very nice fragrant orchid. You guys have seen it several times, but otherwise it's grown leaves that are larger than the previous original leaves, and it's done okay. I'm just happy with the blooms, but I more look forward to this one over here. Okay, this one has done really well. This one is the Rhyncholaelia Digbyana, and this one has grown some very, very nice new, I guess, bulbs or leaves, I'd say, canes even. They're very succulent, but as you can see, they're much larger than the previous leaves. Let me take you a little bit closer to show you the original. So when I got this orchid, and I'll put footage so you could see it, I believe these were the original leaves. So you could sort of see that this leaf over here is significantly larger than the rest of them. When I purchased this orchid, it was pretty cheap and quite small, but I was told it was 3 to 4 years from blooming. Normally it blooms in the spring, so I'm not sure if I'll get blooms next spring, but maybe I will with the size of this growth. And it's pushing out another growth right over here, so we'll see how big this guy gets. And then I do notice some other growths coming from the other side, so I may have to repot this guy at some point. I did repot it last fall. I didn't have any issues. I had it on a heat mat. It was totally fine, so I'm not scared if I have to repot it again. But so far it's growing really nicely. It's tolerating leca extremely well, and we'll see how it goes. Won't spend too much time on this one, but this one is the Neofinetia Falcata. This one is Falcata crossed with Neofinetia Falcata Hisui. And you guys have seen this several times. It's bloomed for me 4 different times. It's given me between 6 and 7 blooms depending on when it bloomed. The flowers typically last about 3 weeks, and then if it's hotter, it tends to shorten the bloom life. But you guys know I love this for its fragrance. Growing really nicely. It's pushing out a new fan over here. I'd say that it's quite a slow grower, but it has bloomed quite nicely. And then I have some leaves that have started coming off on the older growths. But so far I'm happy with it. The roots are liking the semi-hydroponic setup quite well. It's all going down into the leca, and I haven't had any issues with this one. If you guys have been watching my channel long enough, you know I talk about this orchid quite a lot as well. This one's the Phalaenopsis LD Bears King RH3. I love this orchid because it's got a very, very pretty bloom, and it smells like oranges. When I got this orchid, it originally came with a spike, and it didn't bloom for the longest time, so I thought I would have to wait for a while for it to bloom. It started blooming back in April, and it hasn't stopped since. And not only that, but this was the original spike. It pushed out this spike and this spike over here, and for the first time I had 3 blooms on this orchid. One faded this morning, so I took it off, but now it's working on another bud. And it's also starting to push out a brand new spike over here, as you can see. So this orchid has 4 different flower spikes. The root system is just insane. It actually outgrew its pot right away, and I'll never buy these repot me pots again just because I'm gonna have to cut through this now. So I'll be repotting this soon, making sure that this orchid gets what it needs. But this is one of my faves, and it's doing really well. Okay, this one has always been a little funky for me. This is one of the weaker ones from the haul, but this one is the Beallera Patricia McCully Pacific Matriarch. Now, one of the bulbs rotted over here, so I pulled it out. It was very purple and squishy. I pulled it out and the inside was purple, so I wonder if this has fusarium. It might. It sort of doesn't like being in the light so much. This orchid has a tendency to spot. This orchid, when I purchased it, I was told it's 2 to 3 years from blooming, so it was relatively small. But it has some new growths coming in, so we have one right here. And then this one is a relatively new growth as well. You'll see a little bit of damage over here, and it's because I noticed spider mites on it. So I do think this one is a weaker orchid. I'll be repotting it, giving it some fresh medium. I'm not explicitly keeping it separate from the rest of my collection because it may have fusarium. I do have it next to my orchids, but I'm not too concerned about that because I'm not sharing water. I try not to let water splash around with this one. And if I do mess up, I will let you know if there's anything else that I notice. But I keep hearing mixed messages on fusarium, and there's some people that say, oh no, you have to throw away the orchid, or it's not so bad. So, you know, I'm just going to hang on to this and see what happens. It's not next to something that I really, really care about, but if there's an issue and it spreads to other orchids, I'll let you know. I'm just going to leave this in the collection for now and see how it goes. Could also be that this orchid just has a tendency to be purple. I notice when it gets a lot of bright light, the bulbs actually turn purple. So I'm not going to chuck it for that reason. I truly don't know. This one over here is the Phalaenopsis stars Fiona. This is the orchid that I got on sale for $5.99. I was told that it wouldn't bloom for the year last year, and this actually surprised me because it bloomed right away, and it gave me double spikes, so that was really nice. The blooms also lasted for about 4 months, so it was really nice to have this in bloom basically all of winter, almost into the spring. They were medium-sized blooms. Again, I was told it wouldn't flower for the year, and it gave me 2 spikes. So if you're on the fence with buying one of these and you want to grow it and see how it goes, highly recommend it. It might be that they have hormones or something in there, or maybe the temperature change from the greenhouse to my place, maybe it triggered it again, or could be that it was imported from someplace like Thailand or something like that, and it's just getting used to the East Coast over here. But very happy with this one. It is a complex phal. I do like the white blooms, and if it blooms again for 4 months and gives me double spikes, this is definitely a keeper in my collection. I'm really excited about this one because it has a ton of potential. This one's a Zygopetalum Arthur Elle crossed with the Zygo Blue Blazes. This one has grown tremendously since I purchased it. I had to repot it because it outgrew its old pot, and let me show you the roots right now. They're looking pretty good. And the guidance that I got was to make sure that the roots don't get bruised because that's how you damage this orchid. So I literally just took the seedling, the roots look good, and I plopped it into this bigger pot and I gave it some more bark. But you can see some new root tips pushing along. With this orchid, they like intermediate temperatures and it's been quite hot, but I'm very hopeful that we'll start getting some new growth soon. Like this one is pushing through. We've got another new growth over here. We've got another one here. Would love to see this bloom for the first time. Could possibly bloom for me in the winter. We shall see. When I purchased this, it was advertised as 2 years from blooming, but it might bloom sooner. It's grown tremendously. It's more than doubled in size and it seems quite happy. So I find that Zygopetalums from Hausermann, this one in particular, has grown really, really well. Up last, we've got the Brassolaelia Yellowbird. So this one has grown really, really nicely. I repotted it along with the Brassolaelia Digbyana last fall, and it's taken off. As you can see, it's got a ton of growths here. Compared to last year, I'd say that this plant has tripled in size. It bloomed for me one time already. Unfortunately, the blooms were sort of a light yellow and it wasn't fragrant. I keep hearing that a lot of yellowbird orchids are fragrant, so that was a little bit disappointing. But I'm going to give it another shot to bloom and see if any of that changes. But this is the latest growth that it has, and it is taller than the rest of the growths. Actually, it might be this one. It's just really growing from all over the place. This one actually sucks up its water reservoir within 2 days, and the roots just have really taken over the pot. Like if you squeeze this pot, there's no give. It's full of roots. I think I may have to repot it and just make sure there's air gaps in there, because if that fills up with roots on every single leca bead, then we've removed our air gaps and that won't be good for the orchid. Overall, I'm very pleased with this one and I'm happy with how it's grown. Let's see if it'll have some fragrance next time. Anyway, guys, that was a 1-year update on these orchids from Hausermann Orchids. Let me know down in the comments which one is your favorite, which orchid we have in common, and I will catch you guys soon. Thanks, everyone. Bye.